Welcome to this episode of Toronto Blue Jays Update. Look, I'm not going to sugarcoat this anymore. The Kyle Tucker situation has reached a point where we're all just sitting here, refreshing Twitter, waiting for something concrete to finally happen. And yesterday, we got what might be the most telling report yet. Ken Rosenthal, a guy who doesn't just throw things at the wall to see what sticks, came out and said he called Toronto the leader for Kyle Tucker right now. That's not some random blogger, that's Ken Rosenthal. When he says something like that, you pay attention. But here's where it gets messy. We're now months into this whole thing. And while the boba market is finally starting to move with actual confirmed meetings happening, Tucker has been stuck in this weird holding pattern. The same few teams keep getting mentioned, the same reports keep circulating, and honestly, it feels like we're running in circles. Though I will say, the fact that no new teams are really jumping in, besides the Mets, who we'll get to in a second, that actually tells us something important. Rosenthal also said recently that the big move for the Jays would seem to be Kyle Tucker. And when you look at how the Bichette situation is developing, which we absolutely need to talk about, Tucker becomes an even clearer target. But first, there's another report that dropped that barely anyone is discussing. Mark Feinson spoke to two industry sources who still have the Blue Jays tabbed as Tucker's likely destination. One of them said, and I'm quoting here, once they gave Vladdy the extension, they sent a message that they were going all in to win. Signing Dylan Cease was big, but adding Tucker would obviously finish off a pretty impressive 12 months for them. Now listen, Robert Murray said a few days ago that Tucker wants to play for the Jays. Ken Rosenthal is saying Toronto is the leader. These reporters don't just make this stuff up for clicks. Yeah, there's always a chance Tucker signs elsewhere, and people will say the Jays were used as leverage, but this feels like real interest from both sides. The fans are doing their part, commenting under every Kyle Tucker post. Ross Atkins has been asked about it repeatedly. The interest is legitimate and mutual. But then last night, things got a little more complicated. Jon Heyman came out saying the Mets are very much in the mix for Kyle Tucker, but still have stiff competition. Now, this is where people started freaking out a bit, because Ben Nicholson-Smith has been saying over the past week or so that the Mets have suddenly emerged as maybe an even likelier destination than the Jays for Tucker long-term, though his reporting has shifted a little recently. Look, it makes sense that if Tucker wants to play in the United States or prefers a National League team, the Mets would be attractive. But here's the thing, and I agree with the people saying this on social media, this smells like leverage. At this point, Tucker clearly isn't getting the money he wants. The Jays aren't willing to give him $400 million, and if you saw what came out yesterday about Bo reportedly looking for $300 million, you know the market is getting tight. So it wouldn't surprise me at all if Tucker's camp reached out to Heyman and said, hey, make it seem like the Mets are really interested to put pressure on Toronto to pay that extra bit. Especially now with the Bo updates. Things are tightening up, and I think moves are going to start happening soon. Ken Rosenthal also said the Mets can't rely on a short-term, high-average annual value deal if they want a realistic chance at signing Kyle Tucker. Those aren't always easy to do when the market exists to go longer for those players, and I expect that's the position he's going to be in. That's actually really good news for the Jays because they're in position to go longer term. So yeah, there's pressure, there's leverage being played, and we keep hearing the same reports over and over like we're stuck in a circus. But things are starting to come to a head here because of what dropped yesterday about Bichette. Jon Heyman reported that Bo is looking for somewhere in the ballpark of $300 million. We don't know the term, let's assume it's over 10 years. But here's the big one. The Phillies have scheduled a meeting with Bichette. They've done extensive work on the various roster ripple effects, which would require trading Alec Bohm. They're expected to meet with Bichette on a video conference call in the coming days, and the club's interest is legitimate. If it results in a deal, they can move on from JT Realmuto and Alec Bohm. One of the reasons the Phillies are such a possible destination for Bo is because Don Mattingly recently went over there after leaving the Jays. We all know Bo and Mattingly had a really close connection. That's significant because it feels like things are picking up on that front. Former radio guy Bill Madden, and take this with a grain of salt because he's not a major insider, but he said his sources are telling him the Phillies right now are the favorite to sign Bichette. Mattingly wants to bring him in as a bench coach connection. Strong mutual interest that could result in a deal when they meet next week. Phillies will then need to move Alec Bohm. Hopefully this pushes the Blue Jays more to get a deal done with Tucker soon. This is where it gets crazy because people are now saying that once Bo signs, Tucker is going to follow. And look, it'll sting to lose Bichette. If they miss out on Bo and then they miss out on Tucker, this doesn't turn into a complete nightmare offseason because Bo going to the Phillies is better than him going to the Yankees or Red Sox or any American League team. But at the same time, you cannot miss on these guys. You have to get one of them. Your lineup and roster, despite being very good, and Ross has done a solid job so far, it's not complete. You can't be done yet. It's as simple as that. Pressure is starting to mount, and that's probably why we're seeing leverage games being played, or Tucker could actually be going to the Mets. The Jays have reportedly increased their efforts to get Tucker. They haven't increased their efforts to get Bichette, probably because Bo is heading to the Phillies for a meeting, and there haven't been any reports of the Jays having a meeting with him. It's going to get crazy quickly. Whether it's the Mets signing a long-term deal with Kyle Tucker, it doesn't seem like he's going to take a short-term, high-average annual value deal, which is great news for the Jays. Quick thing to mention, they avoided arbitration with Dalton Varsho and Ernie Clement and Kevin Gausman, but Eric Swanson, they didn't settle, which means they're heading to an arbitration hearing. They're going to have to come up with a fair number, which is going to be difficult considering he didn't even play in the majors the year before last. Then comes back and dominates with Toronto in a weird role. Let me know down below what your thoughts are on all of this. I get it, it's getting out of hand, but I'm going to keep you updated every step of the way. You guys have been incredible with the support, and I'll be the first one on the news when it drops. Cheers.